Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Wassalatu wassalamu ala ashrafil mursalin Sayyidina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. How is everybody? Rested well? Very well. Today we'll try and finish the remaining topics, and Brother Lin has suggested a few additional topics that are not in this material. We'll look at some of those topics related to gender relations. That will be looking at page 40. We've done the Ahl al-Kitab one. Issues on the food of Ahl al-Kitab. We can look at the concept of bid'ah, choice responsibility, hudud. And then he wanted us to touch some issues on lesbian, gay, bisexual, and transsexual issues. So inshallah we'll try and cover all that. For some of the gender issues, if we can start on page 40. Some of them are pretty straightforward, but I'd still like us to go through these. One common one that used to be raised, I don't know whether it's still alive in this society, is the idea that the voice of a woman is part of her aura, that a woman's voice ideally should not be heard in public. Is that still a misconception? Yes?
Yes.
Yes.
For some, yes. Okay. One of the purposes for discussing usulul fiqh, are we together? Yeah. One of the purposes for discussing usulul fiqh is so that when we meet these type of differences, there's a systematic way of looking at the subject area. So if we put it as a question, is it permissible for men to speak in public?
Yes.
Why? Sorry?
There's no evidence that says that you can't speak in public.
Okay, there's
So
no
the general
evidence
principle-
against it. So, if we ask the question, is it permissible for men to speak in public? It's, well, there's no prohibition. Is it permissible for women to speak in public?
Depends
Depends. That's interesting. On what?
on the purpose.
Okay. What do you mean?
If let's say we speak something that's good for the public, then it's probably okay.
Depends. If it's good, okay?
Not like singing or entertaining, joking.
You tell me to eat it. All right. Okay. So, if they've got something good to say, otherwise, no singing, no joking, no entertaining. Will this be correct?
Yes.
There's one what do you call it? There's one ayat in the Quran that says do not use the voice of the woman to seduce men. Use it at the proper.
Okay. So,
Seduction.
would it be okay for us to say men should also not use their voice to seduce?
We don't seduce his voice.
Allah mentions woman.
Quran, Allah mentions woman, not men. So it's just women.
The woman need to speak because she is the minister. She's a prime minister. Because she has to speak public.
Okay, that's what she has to.
That's not speaking, that's nagging.
Let's go back to our diagram. This is ibadah or mu'amalat or what? And the principle in mu'amalat is what? Everything is halal except what is haram. We want to see what the Quran says. Then we'll look at Sunnah, Mutawatir, and then we can look at Sunnah, Ahad, we can look at other tools. But you know, once it's passed here, you will have difference of opinions. But the key point is the onus of proof is on the person trying to prohibit. Are we okay with that? Yeah. But if you're going to say it's haram, you have to bring evidence. You don't need evidence for halal. We did that yesterday. Allah says He has created everything for you. The Prophet ﷺ made it clear. Those things that Allah has prohibited you, keep away from them. Those things He has made compulsory upon you, follow them. Those things over which Allah has remained silent are not out of forgetfulness, but rahmatan lahum, but out of His mercy for you. Another hadith, the Prophet ﷺ says, that over which Allah is silent is forgiven. In other words, you can go ahead and do. There's no sin on that. Why? Because of the premise of permissibility. What do we have in the Quran? So let's say women and men speaking. You've been given mouths, right? وَلِسَانًا وَشَفَتَيْنِ. You're expected to speak. You're expected to communicate. Allah describes languages as part of His ayat, part of His science. You're expected لِتَعَارَفُوا, to know each other. That is part of the existence of differences. And we ask questions, not looking for permissibility, just to know, did women speak in the Quran? From Maryam, did she speak?
Yes.
Yes.
From, like, which women didn't speak?
No. Women spoke, men speak. I mean, that's what the mouths were there for. They bought and sold, they stood up for their rights, they opposed this, etc. This is before Islam. Then Islam comes along. How many hadith do we have by Aisha alone? Yeah, over 2,000 hadith. Remember, we don't need evidence for halal. Halal is the assumed default. Everything is halal except what is haram. Women, you can speak except what is haram. The issue is only what they are going to say is good. These are big terms. Fard or wajib, mustahab, mubah, makruh, haram. And here, women and men. Anything you want to say that is wajib, of course, if it's wajib, it's wajib. Mustahab is encouraged. Mubah. Makruh. Is makruh permissible?
Yes.
Yes. Makruh is permissible because there's no sin on it. You're discouraged to do excessive talking. You're discouraged to cut people's sentences. You're discouraged to say what is unnecessary. So it's all discouraged, but it's not haram. There's no sin on you. And God, I talk too much. Anyway, haram, however, is what is prohibited both for men and for women.
Do not say things that are bad, do not insult, do not curse, do not backbite, do not... The moment it's bad. So when we say, when it's good, it's okay, but good includes, actually good will start from here. This one, it's okay, not very okay, but no sin. So that what somebody has to say has to be good is not a condition. It can be neutral. It can be even discouraged, but it's not haram. Singing. Can men sing?
Yes.
Can women sing?
Yes.
Oh, you can't be changing your answer. But we take it all through the same process. Everything halal except what is haram. What in the Quran would prohibit women from singing?
Exposing the aura.
Which aura?
The
Voice.
cannot cover.
Yeah.
To
So
entice
what
men.
becomes, sorry?
Seduce.
They're just singing.
As long as not in solar.
Singing in Salah. So it's okay for men to sing in Salah. Did women sing at the time of the Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam?
Yes.
It didn't seduce men.
I Aisha did among the women, right? Yeah.
Women joined men in singing Tala al-Badru Alayna.
Even before Rasulullah, maybe prohibit.
No, there were two occasions. There was one on the Hijrah, but that is even questioned in its authenticity. The one that is even confirmed is the one in the 9th year of Hijrah after Tabuk. That was towards the 1 year before the Prophet passed away. That's even the stronger one. So women sang. There was even a lady who she promised when the Prophet and others come back, she's going to hold her tambourine and sing and hit around the Prophet ﷺ. And as the Prophet passed, she was hitting. Abu Bakr passed and Omar came and then she stopped. The Prophet is our example, not Omar. During Eid prayer, Eid festivities, women sang, girls sang. In fact, Sayyidina Abu Bakr tried to stop some girls from singing. The Prophet ﷺ said, leave them, it's a day of merriment, let them be happy. Just remember, we don't need evidence that women sang. Is it understood? Yeah. We don't need evidence that women sang. It's just by the way. What we need, it's halal. What we need is there evidence that it is haram? It is forbidden for you to speak deliberately in a soft or seductive way so as to entice somebody to something that is haram. Of course, that's assuming you're not speaking to somebody who is your husband or the other way around. You shouldn't speak with that intention. But if somebody feels your voice is very nice, but that's just your natural voice, that's just your natural voice. Yeah. It's what's your intention. You can't get voice police, your voice. Your voice is okay. We didn't see that. Women spoke, women asked questions. Women recited Quran aloud at the time of the Prophet ﷺ. And the Quran is encouraged. The Quran encourages you to recite it with tartil, in rhythmic tones. Women called adhan. Aisha called adhan. Aisha called adhan. We're not sure where she called, but it was in Medina. And some of the some men didn't feel comfortable with women calling adhan, and they complained to Abdullah bin Umar, the son of Umar bin Khattab. And this gentleman came and told him, aren't you going to stop women from calling prayers? And Abdullah bin Umar said, do you want me to stop women from calling people to the remembrance of Allah? And the man kept quiet. Ibn Umar said, I said, do you want me to stop women from calling people ila dhikrillah, to the remembrance of Allah? The man kept quiet. Ibn Umar asked again, I said, do you want me to stop women from calling people to the remembrance of Allah? The man walked away. So, there's no prohibition singing of men or women. There's how you dress, there's what you sing about, but then that's about dressing. That's about topic. What are you talking about? Entertainment, what do you mean? If it is clean entertainment, Sahaba has no problem with it, but you have to be more specific. What kind of entertainment? If it was haram, then it's haram, and it will be haram for all concerned. Don't seduce, that will definitely be prohibited because you are trying to encourage something that is haram. If you want to seduce your husband, of course, or your wife, that's even sunnah. What other reasons would there be for saying women can't speak? See, one challenge on topics to do with women is the difference between, we discussed this I think, fiqh and sharia. Sharia refers to those clear, eternal teachings and guidance and wisdom of the Quran and the Sunnah. Fiqh is what scholars get from the Quran and the Sunnah. But as we discussed, when scholars are producing fiqh, they use usulul fiqh. And part of the asl, part of the sources of fiqh include urf, custom, maslaha, istishab, the presumption of continuity. That's how we've been doing things. We'll just carry on like that, unless there's need for change. And if everybody is okay, Sharia has no problem with that. And if your urf is like this and everybody is okay with it, so long as it doesn't contradict anything, no problem with that. But then urf becomes fiqh. But then some people call fiqh Sharia. And then it's given greater authority than fiqh, because it's assumed this is the law of Allah, whereas it's actually, sometimes fiqh and Sharia coincide when the Quran and Sunnah is very clear, and alcohol is haram, alcohol is haram. It's in fiqh, but it's also clearly in Sharia. But where the fiqh comes from urf, where the Quran or Sunnah is silent, and you have to fill in the gaps with laws, you still have to use whatever you have. And you produce fiqh that is suitable for your own context, but not necessarily for every context. And that is why when the moment you feel a particular law seems to contradict a maqasid, please dig in to find out where it came from. Is this really a Quranic verse or something in the Sunnah? Or is it urf? Or is it a particular interpretation of the Quran and the Sunnah? Or is it from Qiyas? If you take, we're going off topic, we'll come back in a minute. If you take marriage, for example, when you get stuck in marital laws and the Quran and Sunnah are silent on a particular issue, and Ijma is silent, you want to do Qiyas. You want to draw an analogy. For marriage, where will that analogy come from? For many, it comes from business, partnerships. Would you say marriage is similar to buy a sale transaction, buying and selling, and the money you give is the cost of your wife, that you own her, she's your property? Is that the analogy you choose? Or do you choose another analogy of musharaka, a partnership business, in which I have rights, you have rights, I have responsibilities, you have responsibilities, and we agree on the following and we go into that partnership? Depending on which one you pick for your qiyas, you'll produce some very interesting conclusions. If in your urf and your custom, it was more like a sales agreement, and everybody seems to be okay with that, some scholars just pick on that and they go with that. And they view it's the man, the mahar is like a bride price, it's not a gift. Even though you are not paying for something, you could just teach a verse of Quran, you could give her, it doesn't have to be financial, it's just a gift that's accepted. It's definitely not the value of the person, so it's nothing to do with bride price. But because an analogy is made with that, the qiyas is done with that, then all sorts of funny conclusions come up by sometimes respected scholars, but that is tied to the urf in which the scholars grew up and the immediate analogy they felt was closest. For another scholar, he doesn't see it as a buying and selling transaction or a buying transaction. He looks at it as a musharaka. It's a partnership. I can get out anytime, you can get out anytime. Just like with business partnership, it's a civil arrangement. And if somebody then uses that, they use qiyas to help them where the Quran and Sunnah would be silent. But the use of trying to find out where the rulings come from is, once you know this is qiyas, then you know, of course, you're going to have problems. Because qiyas will take certain assumptions of what is the illah, what's the reason. So just general piece of advice on this subject area. When scholars say, majority of scholars, and this is their opinion, it doesn't matter the number. It's what is it based on? Is it Quran? Is it Sunnah? Is it Ijma? Is it Qiyas? And you know where differences are going to begin. Yeah. So please be bold enough not to what scholars said, or Imam Shafi said, or Malik, or whatever. Fine. What's it based on? And is that the most appropriate to your context? When the doors of ijtihad have been closed for long, a lot of fatwas get out of sync with reality. But scholars that would encourage new assessment, look at new legal reforms, are contemporary. By definition, the majority have a different opinion, by definition. That doesn't mean the majority gave a fatwa of your context. They gave a fatwa of their context. So whose majority and whose minority is irrelevant. Is which opinion best achieves the maqasid of marriage, of this, of that, depending on the topic. So just have that at the back of your mind when, this is for nearly any topic. Just remember the principles. Any other questions on this?
for example, like there's a situation that a lady is singing in public and a non-mahram is attracted by that voice. And then what? Lady will be sinful or?
No, that's his problem. She may be reciting Quran, she may be giving a talk, she may be a lecturer, she could be a teacher. You have so many women teaching hadith. If looking at a woman attracts you, she's not done anything wrong. You've been told lower your gaze and guard your modesty, just as women have been told to lower their gaze and guard their modesty. So you're just doing your halal. What's going on in other people's heads, that's them and their intentions.
How about women go on stage and singing in front of everyone in public?
Like a lecturer?
No, like in a stadium.
No,
or in
they
a-
sing like a normal love song.
Stage performance. Yeah.
Listen, just go back. There's your own, I'm not used to, I've never seen it. And with all due respect to your opinion, that's your opinion. If you want to ask from the point of view of Islam, did the Quran prohibit it?
No.
Did the Sunnah prohibit it?
No.
It's not part of your urf, Sharia will respect that. But if you're going to say it is haram, you need something solid. Whether it is a man standing in front of a stadium talking or singing or whatever, or a woman standing and talking and singing, so long as you don't have any basis for haram, yes, can a woman stand and talk to 1,000 people? 10,000, 20,000. Aisha spoke in the presence of over 20,000.
Public speech is one thing. The woman going on stage, doing a stage performance like singing or that, and you know very well it's going to create a fitna.
Okay? What if a man did the same thing with a mixed audience too?
Same thing.
I mean, when you say fitna, what do you mean? People will be attracted to them?
Yeah, like men get attracted or men start dancing because of her voice or singing.
Okay,
or
no.
music,
I'd like us to pick one by one. There are certain things will be prohibited because of their association with other things. You're singing, you're dancing in a sexually enticing way, then we would say, you know what, the whole package is supporting together, so we would say no. Pick it separately. A woman standing and singing in an audience or in a hall of men and women, what's the prohibition? That's what I'm interested in. Do we agree everything halal except what is haram? Then what is the haram?
It's not the singing, but maybe a dress code or something like that.
Oh, that's a separate question.
But let's see if it's a modest love song.
Sung by a man or a woman?
A woman.
Why for a woman?
Yeah, because a woman can.
So just say it and we ask whether it will apply to women.
How about?
I mean, let me ask a question. A woman stands and sings a song and a lot of you, wow, you know, very nice voice, very nice whatever, she's very attractive, if only, if only. Does that same thinking go when you have men standing and singing? Does it happen?
Yes.
I don't know.
No, you wouldn't.
Men don't know now.
But
All this while,
no, I like that answer, you know, and that is why, as men, we think like men. A guy standing, what's attractive about that?
Yeah.
Okay, but you have to be careful you don't allow how you feel to become a source of Sharia. Yeah, you have to go to something more neutral. And that's what this is for. To say haram, that God doesn't like, you have to be able to explain why you said God said. Because it's either God said or God's prophet said. But if God is silent about it in the Quran, and his prophet is silent about it, then who else did God speak to? Not you. Okay?
I think the problem is that the don't seduce, okay, and where you draw the line. Yeah.
And that is why you've got certain maxims. Al-umur bimaqasidiha. Actions are judged by the intentions behind them. And the issue of don't seduce is who is being given that instruction. Is it don't seduce or don't be seduced?
And it depends on the audience also. If you have youth in the audience, normally you get the party will get wild.
Sorry?
When a woman go upstage singing, the audience will get wild, especially the younger generation.
Have you seen how they behave when Michael Jackson goes on stage?
Very well.
Right, so I'm saying
I mean, I couldn't believe
shouldn't be allowed.
there was this thing they were showing, shouldn't be allowed. You know, you gotta come up carefully with anything. Michael Jackson just said hi, and whatever. And they were showing, you know, somebody was, he said hi. He said I mean, to me, a lot of these, you know, insult, alhamdulillah, I didn't have that upbringing. The point is, you can have women who are weak in the presence of certain men, men who get weak in the presence of certain women. And how we view gender from our perspectives, we should always ask ourselves, is it also true the other way around? Many brothers who are involved in public speaking, singing, whatever, just as many sisters. I mean, my wife tells me how many, can you call this person? What for? Tell him to stop calling me. I've told him sorry, she was on a television program, whatever. So I have to, hey, my name is whatever. Yeah, this person is my wife. Oh, thank you. Like, get it. The point is, we need to always try and cut through the various things that influence our decisions and try and see from the point of view of submission to the will of Allah, the Quran, the Sunnah, what is that position? And how can I get used to that? How can I pull myself out of my cultural upbringing, company, assumptions, my own cultural programming, and understand how does Allah view things? Let me ask a question. Put it as a riddle. Does this man and his wife who had breakfast at home, after breakfast, they both go to work, and he takes their son, the father takes the son to school. On his way to school, they have an accident, and he takes the child to the nearest hospital. And when he gets to the hospital, emergency ward, the nurse tells him, sit down, and she takes the little boy to the operating theater and quickly asks for the surgeon, doctor. Surgeon comes and looks at the boy, and by the time they clean the blood, the surgeon says, I can't operate on this boy. The nurse says, why? Surgeon says, he's my son. A question. If you know the answer, keep quiet. I think we raised it last time. Who is the surgeon if the real father is the one who brought the child to the hospital?
I'm supposed to keep quiet.
Sorry?
I'm supposed to keep quiet.
You're supposed to keep quiet. Okay. Okay. Father and mother at home, breakfast. Both of them go off for work. Father takes the child to school. On the way, there's an accident. Takes the child into the hospital. Nurse takes over. Surgeon comes, says, I can't operate on this child. Why? The surgeon says, because he's my son. How? Sorry?
No.
Surrogate mother.
Surgeon.
Okay.
The surgeon is the what?
Okay. Anybody?
The surgeon is the mother.
The surgeon is the mother. Correct. Most people have difficulty in, actually some people get very creative answers. Yeah. Surrogate. Surrogate this, maybe the father actually had a child in his previous marriage and whatever, and maybe the doctor is just a good Muslim saying this is my son, not real son. Maybe it's his uncle. And sometimes, I think what I find interesting is how it sometimes helps us see some of our really deep conditionings. That it's very difficult for someone to answer that question, particularly if you come from certain cultures, because you just don't assume that a doctor and a surgeon would be a woman. Once you have accepted a surgeon could be a woman, then it's like, yeah. But it's the same assumptions we bring into discussions. Women can't, and men can't, young people can't, this can't. And you always have to ask yourself, is this Quran and Sunnah talking, or is it just you as a product of your own upbringing and environment? Okay.
So the conclusion
About
the aurat of the human voice.
everything halal except if there's evidence that it is haram.
You know, Sheikh, I come from Kelantan. It's a state that ruled by Islamic party.
Yeah.
They ban women not only singing, performing anything, like even saying instrumental music, anything, even small girls. So by saying that they ban that because they want to block the means.
This thing of blocking the means, one of the reasons Imam Shafi had a problem with Sadr Daria as a tool is because blocking means or preclusion is something could lead to a haram, and so you make it haram because of what it could lead to. Preventing. Unfortunately, certain things have more than one benefit. They could lead to many things. So in some countries, like in Saudi Arabia, you have like at the time of the Prophet, men and women could see each other. During weddings, men and women attended the same weddings. I mean, you even have, like in the marriage of some of the Sahaba, it was the bride who was serving the male guests the drinks. She served the Prophet ﷺ. Okay. What we find going on of this complete seclusion and segregation, that has nothing to do with Quran and Sunnah. Nothing. Say it again. Nothing. Yeah.
In the Quran, the Allah mentioned if somebody want to ask something from the Prophet's wife, they have to have
It's good to read the Sababun Nuzul. It's the curtain of the house that you don't just go into the Prophet's house to go and see their wives. Speak to them from outside. That's all. But when they, so instead, because many people want to, they had a lot, I mean, the wives of the Prophet were a treasury of hadith. You want to know a lot, ask them. And some men would go and want to speak to them and, you know, hello, and, you know, go in and some embarrassing incidences. But, so the verse was telling the men to speak to women. The men should be min wara al-hijab, from behind the hijab. It wasn't telling women to be from behind the hijab. It was the men, the restriction was being put on. Yeah. It was an instruction to men. You speak to women from behind the veil. And when you see what was the veil, it was the curtain. Yeah. But it didn't mean you have a veil everywhere you go.
Now that I know the truth, am I obligated to tell public about this? The truth that public being stuff.
That is you and Allah. Just as it is between me and Allah to tell you to the best of my knowledge what I understand. You, if something is being misrepresented about Allah or the Prophet, should we feel comfortable? It's okay. If somebody says something wrong about you, and I know you, and I care about you, should I correct it?
Yes, yes, of course. I mean, that is the thing.
Then, what about Allah and His Prophet?
That's why I use the word obligated. But
That's
I don't
why
know
I'm
how.
not answering the question. It's not meant to be easy. I mean, you read the history of prophets and what people are ready to do with and to prophets who try to bring about social change. They did everything. You know, what would the people of Thamud want to do to their prophets, or the people of Lut want to do to their prophet, or people of, sometimes it's just a small family got Yusuf in prison for God knows how many years just because he wanted to stay upright. Culture depends on what you touch and who you touch. Meccans weren't very happy.
Singing and music blend together because I was told that music is a subaha, so better leave the subaha. Does it come together, singing and music?
Okay, we'll come to that question. I want us to tackle the questions on women, and then we'll come to singing. But is singing ibadah or mu'amalat? Then he goes through the whole. Music, ibadah or mu'amalat? Alright, so you have to look at which ayah. Is it certain that that is what it's talking about? Which hadith? Unfortunately, some people treat topics like music with the assumption as if it's ibadah, that everything is haram. Okay, prove it is halal. What if I prove music is haram, halal? It's you to say which one is haram. And the question is, if music was played at the time of the Prophet, if various instruments were used and flute, etc., and people were not prohibited, then where's the prohibition coming from?
There is a hadith, right? Instrument with strings.
No hadith like that. It just says ma'azif. And scholars differ on the meaning of ma'azif. Is it wind instrument or string instruments? Or wind and string instruments? And that's where others look at the time of Sahaba. When shepherds and people were using wind instruments, did they stop them? If they didn't, then it didn't apply to wind instruments. Then of course you've got Ibn Hazm and others, Imam Ash-Shawkani, who say there is no authentic hadith prohibiting it. And then even those who do consider the hadith as authentic, they deform the interpretation. It's not our topic. Right.
Is it true that there's one group of scholars of Usul who came out with the maxim that everything which concerns the interaction between men and women is haram unless proven otherwise.
Good. That in the maxim, everything is halal except what is haram, some scholars said except in ibadah and what they call abda, sexual relations, not interaction, sexual relations. Why do they say that? This is a circle or set of all human beings. Who are you allowed to marry? Non-mahram? Okay, so non-mahram. Who are you not allowed to marry? Who, what do you mean? Who are the mahram? Parent, siblings,
Cousin,
auntie, grandparents, sisters or wife, in-laws, children, stepchildren, foster children. Now, by the time you say only this group is allowed to marry, what do you call this kind of diagram? This looks like everything is haram except what is halal. Is it understood? Yeah. So instead of saying in marriage, everybody is halal except what is haram, but the halal is just the non-mahram, that's all. The haram,
The non-mahram is a big.
yeah, it's just one group. Okay, what's your relationship? No relationship, fine, that's it. But all the other relationships, you can't marry. Okay, what's my relationship with a non-mahram? That's non-mahram. Okay, and what's my relationship with everybody else? This is parent, this is grandparent, this is that. So when you look at it that way, you say, you know what, instead of saying that in marriage or for sexual relations, everything is halal except what is haram, but the halal is just one, and the haram is all the others, a shorthand is just say, you know what, yeah, in marriage, it's the other way around. It's just a way of saying it. Yeah. But if you ask them, what does this solve? That this didn't solve. Nothing. It's still everything is permissible except what is prohibited from an ayah. So those who say, no, this one does the job, there's no need to create a new maxim. They would say with this one, yeah, you can marry anybody you want except what is haram. It's just that the exceptions when it comes to marriage are more. They do the same thing sometimes with the issue of with meat. Okay. And they would say, you can't eat an animal that is slaughtered in this way. You can't eat an animal that is slaughtered in the other way. You can't eat an animal that is slaughtered in this way. And you can't eat this, you can't eat that. Yeah. If you look at the various ways of killing animal, the halal method is one method. The haram methods are many. Okay? Therefore, the haram are more than the halal. So, in teaching it, it's easier to just say, just remember what is halal, the rest are haram. Then you just have to remember one or two things. Yeah. In marriage, just remember who is halal, the rest are haram. Are you related? No, it's halal. So, yes, brother, you're right. There are some people who present that as exceptions, but they're not, it's more linguistic. It's just another way of saying the same thing. But this stands. The next topic. So if we just flip through on page 41, woman's voicing congregational salam, we find Aisha reciting, praying in Maghrib prayer and reciting aloud. But they take it when the Prophet said, pray as you see me praying, he
he didn't say, men pray as you see me pray. Women have another way of prayer. On page 43, women calling adhan. So you've got all the hadith on that there. On page 44, women reciting Quran aloud.
Sorry, one question. When Aisha called adhan, was that the time the absence of men, no men called adhan?
Or Medina. Page 45. No. It was to the hearing of men, and this happened quite frequently. And that is why the other gentleman came and said, won't you stop women from calling? Because men would hear women calling. I mean, you do hear people saying, okay, but when it's only when women are alone. You know, that's because they've already absorbed the idea that women's voice is aura. So this must be an exception. When you say, but where's the assumption that voice of woman is aura? None. Where did women go out where no men? I mean, some create very, very creative scenarios that didn't exist as ways of trying to interpret things when it's just their default setting that's the problem.
There is any evidence that women come and imams to the
She's asking whether there's any evidence that a woman can be an imam, like for prayer.
Can for women mix.
Women leading women, that one happened. Aisha, Salama, Atiyah, number of women led women in prayer. In the case of Atiyah, Waraka, it says, and she led Ahl Dariha, the people of her household. And according to some commentators, that would include some men. Some said no. From the point of view of the madhabs, you remember we were saying that everything halal except what is haram. But some feel that in ibadah is the other way around. Both everything haram except what is halal. For those who consider that even in ibadah, everything halal except what is haram, the question is, where's the prohibition? Because the Prophet did not mention, if you say, what did the Quran say? Quran didn't say women can't lead. The Sunnah doesn't say women can't lead. And so in the Hanbali school, they take it women can lead in Sunnah prayers, in Nafilah prayers. That's in the Hanbali. In some of the older schools, like Jariri, madhab of Imam al-Tabari, Abu Thawr, and you find this in Bidayat al-Mujtahid, on the topic to do with qualifications of an imam, they consider if the woman is more knowledgeable than the men, then a woman can lead men in Salat. Yeah. It's just that in the arrangement, the men will still stay in front, women are still behind, but who is doing the recitation, who is doing everything is the more knowledgeable. Yeah, we're not used to it. That's the only problem. Yeah, this is not Amina Wudud. Yeah, this is before the West existed.
Sorry, but if you see the scholars list that in ibadah all haram is halal, so it means the woman cannot be imam of the congregation.
That is if you take that. The question is, did the Sahaba operate with the understanding that in ibadah everything was haram except what was halal? Did the Sahaba understand that concept? If they were innovating during the time of the Prophet ﷺ, and none of them was stopped from doing things, and they never stopped each other, and during the time of the Sahaba, they would add things to ibadah, and they seem to have no idea that in ibadah everything was haram except what is halal. That is why you find scholars like Shafi and a number of others, when an innovation comes, they're not asking, is it ibadah, is it mu'amalat? No, they just ask, does it contradict the Quran or not? So during the time of the Prophet ﷺ, when a particular Sahabi comes up with, you know what, I'm going to fast every day, that's ibadah. But because it contradicts the right of the body, you need to rest. The Prophet said, but your body has a right over you. So that was a form of innovation in ibadah that the Prophet ﷺ said no to. Another one says, I'm going to pray all night, spend the night in prayer. And the Prophet ﷺ said, but your wife has a right over you. In other words, sexual rights. Because it contradicted something, the Prophet said no. Another person says, I'm not going to get married, I'll castrate myself. And the Prophet said no. Marriage is my sunnah. When, however, other forms of bid'ah, other forms of innovation were done in salat, like major ones, things that today would be completely unacceptable. When you were praying, if you came late for prayer, say Imam is praying Dhuhr prayer, and the Imam has done one rak'ah already, is in his second rak'ah. What used to happen was the person joining the prayer will come and just try and find out, with sign language, like how many rak'ahs have you done? This one will just say, or this is number 2. You do Allahu Akbar, but gradually catch up. You carry on and you complete together. That's how it was done. Then Abdullah bin Mas'ud, a Sahabi, comes and finds, he just joins the prayer. He just joins the prayer. And when the Imam says Assalamu alaikum, he stands up, brings the one that was missed, sits down, Assalamu alaikum. And the Prophet ﷺ said, next time any of you misses a rak'ah, do what Ibn Mas'ud did. Okay? Did Ibn Mas'ud understand that in ibadah everything is haram except what is halal? That is why, for some scholars, this is what the Sahaba operated on. Because you are deriving your usul from particularly the time of the Prophet and the Sahaba. But if the principle that in ibadah everything was haram except what was halal, what some of these scholars want to find out is, did anybody know about that usul? If nobody seemed to know about it, then why bring it up? Because every asl, everything halal except what is haram, has a basis. In the Quran, in the Sunnah. Where you say, but women are an exception, or sexual relations are an exception, or meats are an exception, or this is an exception, okay, no problem. But what's the basis? If no ayah, nothing to back it up, then sorry. I mean, accept there's a basis for disagreement. So it is based on that for those scholars, and when we say Abu Thawr, when we say Imam al-Tabari, these are mujtahid imams. They're not, I mean, Tabari is known for tafsir and his tariq, history. But when you look at the list of mujtahid imams, those who had madhabs but were killed for political reasons, the madhab basically just died out to a great extent. The Abu Thawr, another mujtahid imam, he had the Thawri madhab. These were mujtahid imams. You know, you don't say they don't know what they're talking about. And when you understand their approach to things, you may not feel comfortable with it, but it has a basis in interpretation. And whichever interpretation you take is because you picked a particular principle. It's just that it's become more popular. And anything that seems to be giving women anything like an equal privilege to men is generally viewed today as Western influence. Yeah. And that's why you have to really be careful about both Western and local influence. Yeah. Just be careful about influences. And just ask yourself, you know, what are those principles? Easier said than done. As we said before, yesterday, our objective here is just so that you know where the scholars are coming from. How do you handle your society? What do you do when scholars differ? That's a separate question. Which is stronger? Which you feel achieves the maqasid more? Which makes it easier? You know, a gentleman and his wife embraced Islam. She became a Muslim before him. He became a Muslim later. He is slow at memorizing Fatiha and whatever. The woman can lead him in prayer. Should he follow her in prayer? You know there's a basis. You will look at the situation, but you would also hopefully understand that it's not as easy as this is right and this is wrong. But this is based on this, and this is based on that. And this equation is a respectable equation. And so is this. You may not find the conclusion culturally settling, maybe a bit unsettling, but at least you know it, and if somebody decides they're going to go ahead with it, you know, don't raise hell. Just chill. Yeah.
With regard to what you just said about a woman leading a man if she's more knowledgeable, if they decide to practice that, should they tell people in this culture, or should they just remain silent? It's rather than an Allah. So
What do you think?
I think they should just keep quiet. Just wondering.
Family business, family business.
But the question, is it allowed?
Always. Yeah. Did Allah have a problem with it? If not, did the Prophet have a problem with it? If not, who has a problem with it? You know? Yeah. Yeah. I mean, because, sorry?
It's an ibadah, right? I mean, prayer is ibadah.
Yes.
You say that everything is not allowed, someone is allowed.
That's one opinion. The other opinion is ibadah and muamalat, everything is allowed except what is haram. That's what we were saying. Sorry?
That's why I get to.
It's muamalat. Sorry, it's ibadah.
On that basis, we must look at what is permissible, but not, we are going to interact with this.
Yes, we still cannot absorb that there is opinion, ibadah, all halal and haram. But we understand so far, ibadah all
In muamalat, everybody takes this one. Okay? Ibadat, you have different sort of opinions. For some, ibadah and muamalat is this one. For some, ibadah is this one, muamalat is this one.
Which one is more?
More?
Ibadat, consider all haram except halal, or
What do you mean more?
more in scholars, I mean among the scholars, which one have more opinion, their opinion popular?
When you pick a topic, you just pick a topic. After salams, staying behind to do collective dua. Collective dua. That is ibadah. That was not taught by the Prophet. Okay? But then scholars say, even if it's ibadah, it is not haram, so they go with this. They would consider having a date on which you're going to do mawlud and you're going to recite Quran and you're going to do these acts of ibadah, the fact that you even put a time and a date and all that makes it an act of ibadah. So you ask, how many scholars from Ibn Hajar, Ibn Kathir, the long list of them, and this is not just based on madhabs. They don't have a problem with Mawlid. Some have. Like if you're looking for the strongest arguments for those who take this, Ibn Taymiyyah and Abu Ishaq Shafi'i. For those who take this direction with ibadah, Suyuti is bin Abdul Salam. These are the people who have given the strongest arguments for those positions. Abdullah bin Umar. Sister is saying about Abdullah bin Umar seeing some people doing dhikr together in a group aloud and saying that is bid'ah. Other scholars quote, both in Sahih Bukhari and you find in Muslim, of some of the Sahaba doing dhikr in group. And the Prophet ﷺ went and saw them doing it in group. And he asked them, what are you doing? They said, we are here to remember Allah, to thank Him for having made us Muslims. The Prophet ﷺ said, swear by Allah, nothing else brought you here. They said, we swear that's the only thing. The Prophet said, I just wanted to be sure because an angel told me there are a group of people in my community that Allah is pleased with. In another hadith, the Prophet ﷺ said, whenever a people get together in dhikrillah, for the remembrance of Allah, angels surround them and Allah's mercy descends upon them. And the understanding of some of the early scholars was dhikrillah was dhikr. Others say dhikrillah is general. It can be lectures, it can be whatever. Then every evidence you bring, these ones hold their position. Every evidence you bring, these ones hold their position. Just know they are there and just chill about it. Yeah, I mean, which do you prefer? That's your own choice. But just have more tolerance and don't make bigger problems with that. So on page 45, where it says Saltumara Aura, a woman's voice is part of her aura, and they keep quoting it as if it's a hadith. It's nothing like that. Then we have the women's voice heard by Prophet, women spoke in the presence of non-mahram companions, women saying Salaam alaikum to men, and answering alaikum salam. Page 47, hadith narrated by women. On page 48, women singing. And then women witnessing. Then on page 49, we move to another topic, which is to do with the question of segregation and seclusion. This is tied to the whole issue of women and men mixing. We're in the same room, or you're in the same market, or you're in the same this or that. Again, if it's under mu'amalat, rule everything permissible except what is prohibited. Yeah. Everything permissible except what is prohibited. Anything to be prohibited must be from a clear verse of the Quran or from the Sunnah. The moment you're going to say Sadhu Dariya, or what can lead to, you have to be context specific. You can't say, in my society, in my context, this will lead to, but you can't declare that for the Ummah. And when you say something would lead to, you have to be able to say it would lead to with a high degree of certainty. Not it may, it could. Otherwise, you find all sorts of very restrictive policies coming up. In some societies, they restrict both men and women meeting to such an extent they have a big problem of getting married to their women. So in some societies, the women have a tough time getting a husband. They don't get to know anybody. And when the husbands find that, those who can afford it, they just go to other countries like Egypt and go and get married there. And then people are complaining they have got a problem. Well, you started it. You know, one of the things that Sheikh Nasruddin Albani once said, he's a hadith scholar. He said, when the Quran and Sunnah was good enough to take the worst Jahiliyyah community out of its condition, and then Allah says, Al-Yawma akmaltu lakum dinakum, this day have I perfected for your religion, completed my favor upon you, and I've chosen for you Islam as your religion. He says, how dare you try to bring up improvements on it? It's when you have implemented what has been prescribed and that doesn't work because of your own unique situation, then you start saying, we need to do ijtihad and come up with more things. So, when the Quran and Sunnah has already given its teachings, please be very careful about, Sabr Taraya has its uses. You know, all these, they're all useful. But remember, this is now human assessment of consequences. And sometimes it's the assessment by a scholar who has no background in sociology, no background in impact assessment. It's just his own thinking of what it could lead to. You know, it's not God speaking. It's not somebody who has assessed the because sometimes the Riyah is blocking things that will lead to a haram. How are you sure it will lead? What else does it lead to? You have to be really careful in assessing these things. Otherwise, with all your good intentions, you put down policies. I mean, even people who think really carefully about economic policies end up finding they were trying to solve one problem, they created another. The biggest problem with it when you do it in the name of Islam is because you say according to Sharia, you know, suddenly you put God's name around it. And it's as if this is God's position. As if it's any more different from the change of price of candy bars. It's somebody's opinion. Good intention. But it can be challenged. Which is why on any issue, try and find out where does it come from. Is it Quran? What interpretation? Is it Sunnah? What interpretation? Is it Urf? Is it another of these tools of ijtihad? So on the topic of purdah and segregation, just running through the main topics there. The idea of purdah or domestic confinement is actually defined in the Quran as a punishment. Yeah. That it is for people who are guilty of fahisha that should have domestic confinement. This was never a way of life for women. At the time of the Prophet, women went to the market, women went, I mean, where did men go that women couldn't go? Where did men go that women didn't go? At the time of the Prophet.
Grave.
Huh?
Graveyard.
Graveyard?
Okay.
There was a woman who was even crying and praying at the graveyard. And the Prophet, as he was passing by, tried to comfort her. She didn't look at who it was, and she said, because you don't know what I'm going through, and he kept quiet, and he left. Later she got to know.
Is it great woman can do, right? But to send talks with the rape not allowed for women.
Because we've been stuffed with such ideology. So many books.
Can I ask, where do we draw the line? Because everything that we discuss about, in the end, people can say that, oh, it's not allowed because of food. They can always refer it to food because food is already like.
But the moment somebody says urf, at least you know where it came from. And if you're challenging urf, that urf is not fair, because urf changes, and urf is tied to a specific location, you know, then okay, that's just it, but that's not Islam's answer, that's our answer. And if we change our urf, or we agree to change our urf, we change. If our urf is not fair, it's not achieving a maqasid because circumstances have changed, we change. Urf is not some infallible source. Urf is really there to respect social cohesion. So long as it's not being unfair, you respect it. But if it is being unfair, sometimes people accepted urf because they thought urf was Sharia. So even if it wasn't fair in the past, we'll still carry on because we thought it was Sharia. Yeah. But now the urf is more clearly unfair. So it's urf. Yeah.
Since we are in the issue of women and covering of aura and Buddha, what about covering the head? I have not seen any explicit dalil from Quran and Sunnah.
Very good. So on the covering of the head, I think after this chapter we have the one on hijab, so just we'll come to that inshallah. So wives of the Prophet, page 49, they went out of their homes. Page 50, other women at the time of the Prophet went out. They went to work, they went to the farm, they went to the market. Ashifa was actually made the head of the marketplace of Medina. It was a woman during the Caliphate of Umar. Zeman said she would get a stool and stand on the stool. And anybody who had complained, you go to Shifa. Yeah. Anybody cheated, anybody whatever, you go to her.
This one, for the married woman with the permission of the husband.
What about the married woman with the permission?
For the
Are you
woman
reading?
who
Are you
went
asking?
out from home.
Permission of the husband was needed where it was needed. Where there was an understanding between the husband and the wife. Sauda, you have a hadith where she wanted to go out and she went out. And Umar saw her going out and said, you shouldn't be going out, you should go back home. And she went and complained to the Prophet ﷺ that, look, I was going out and this is what Umar said. And the Prophet ﷺ said, women have the right to go out for their legitimate needs. So it's to do with, do they have an understanding with the husband? And the same thing. I mean, morally, if between you and your wife, every morning she goes to work, and you got no problem, you don't have to ask your permission to go to work.
The question that I asked, even if the wife wants to go to the parents, you know, because it is not normal, but the wife must ask the husband permission before can go, even though for a good cause.
There's the going out that is a right of the wife, whether the husband accepts or doesn't accept. There's the going out that's so for example, it is like in Maliki fiqh, the woman to visit her parents, yes, just as if the man is going to travel, you will let your family know you are going. You don't just disappear, that I have a right to, I don't need to tell anybody, whatever. There's I'm trying to draw a line, and it's a gradient. Yeah. Where there is mawadda and rahmah, there's understanding, there's mutual respect, then everyone lets everybody know where they're going. And the question of rights doesn't come up. Rights, that's where line thing is, the moment you start to depend on rights, you've got a problem with your relationship. It is where you feel either for reason of insecurity, and this is solved a lot in modern society with telephones. Just to let you know, I'm going here, and he has no problem with that, and she has no problem with that. But if you say, go back to rights, you would say, just as he and she have a right to live together, he is responsible for her protection. You can't tell me I'm responsible for the safety of my wife, but my wife doesn't have to let me know where she's going, but I'm still responsible. And if I'm responsible for her safety, this is not about oppressing for just ego. I'm responsible for her safety, then I want to know where she's going. And if I feel it's not safe, I'll tell her no. Or we'll go together. Or go with somebody. But you can't tell me I'm responsible, it is for my child, same thing. You can't tell me I'm responsible, but then the person can go wherever they want, for as long as they want, but I'm still responsible. So, on the question of legality, yes, the Prophet ﷺ said women should ask permission when going out.
Should or must?
No, should, because if it was must, they would do it every time. But if we had that it wasn't done every time, that within the family there was the understanding that since the husband knows she's either going here or there, and if she's going to go anywhere else, she'll let me know. But there was also the understanding that if he's going to go anywhere that's of significant distance, he's going to go out of town, etc., then he would let me know. That understanding kept the relationship fine, and there's nothing really to worry about. The thing the Prophet is trying to discourage is situation where there's anxiety of where is this person? When are they coming back? I didn't know they were even going. And to ensure whatever little animosity or anger or little fight that happened in the family, you've got certain rules that you will still let each other know where you're going. Particularly when in most traditional societies where women were not working, home was based. So when I don't see you at home, I can be a bit worried. Why? Because if I'm looking for you, I know where to go. Legal rights and legal responsibilities, you should. But there are those other people you have obligations to, like your parents and others. And within the Maliki school, I think they even put you have a right to go to your parents at least once a week, and if they're getting older, you can negotiate. But that is where, if they have a need, then you go and meet that need. And this is where sometimes men try to abuse legal need, that instead of, yeah, this right is for the purpose of protection, is for the purpose of safety, you find people using the same law for the purpose of just abuse and control. It's just pure ego.
Yeah, but let's see, if the woman ignore the husband, so the woman commits sin, or the woman, I mean, in Islam, the woman can just carry on with the intention, even if the husband stop or not allow her to go to the parents.
Okay, it depends on why. If the husband is just being egotistical, then he is the one committing a sin. I mean, you should honor your parents. And somebody saying, no, you can't. Why? Just like that. You know, like, come on. We need to be really careful about what goes on with our intentions. That just because Sharia has given you the right to protect and take care of, so it's made you like a policeman, that you don't become abusive just because you have a uniform. And you want to get over, but I still have a uniform. Yeah, but it wasn't given to you for that intention. And it's the same type of saddaraya, or the opposite, where you are using a legitimate means for an illegitimate ends. The moment decisions in family are not tied to compassion, to protecting each other, to the welfare of each other, to the benefit of the bigger family, to the benefit of the neighborhood, it is contrary to the maqasid. I mean, then what's your objective? Like, which maqasid? Your wife wants to go to her parents. Why? She hasn't seen them for 2 days, or they've just come back from a journey, or whatever it is. Or she wants to go to her friend's house. There's nothing wrong with her friend. She just needs company. Okay? No, you can't go. What is the maqasid you're trying to achieve? What is the objective to do with the betterment of the family that you are trying to achieve?
Let's say the husband don't like the in-laws. So the husband is scared that the wife will get influenced by the in-laws.
Then the question is, if she doesn't like your in-laws, then what?
But the husband got the power.
No, that is only
veto.
Yeah, that becomes an abuse of power, and that is if you use the qiyas of sale.
Oh, this is new to me, man.
Good. That is if you use the qiyas of sale, then you say I've got that power. If you use the qiyas of musharaka, of partnership, then you find, like in the Shafi'i madhab, you have what they call the kitaba, the marriage contract, and here you can write in the marriage contract you have a right to divorce the husband. Okay? Traditionally Shafi'i, if you don't have that, it's not recognized. You can't divorce your husband. It's in Maliki you can divorce your husband even if there's no contract written. But what is a marriage contract? A marriage contract is where you stipulate, this is a musharaka type of arrangement. A marriage contract is where you're getting married to somebody, but because of urf, because of custom, because of anything, you feel there are certain rights I would want, and I don't want to go with the prevailing culture. Okay? Say, a lady is from somewhere else, Nigeria, and she's getting married to a Malay. She can stipulate that there are certain things in the Shafi'i school I'm not comfortable with. There are certain things in the Urfi I'm not comfortable with. Or she's from anywhere, Japan, wherever. In the marriage contract is where she puts certain things because she doesn't either trust you enough, it's unfortunate, but she says, you know what, yeah, I seem to understand from what you're saying that you can stop me from working, that you can stop me from going to see my parents once a month, that you can this, you can that. So you know what, we'll put in the marriage contract, I'm agreeing to marry you on the condition that I can divorce you anytime I want. Because I'm an equal investor in the house, 50% of our joint property is mine, or the value of any of my contribution is mine. In addition, I can go to my parents' house anytime I want. I can this, I can that. The moment you sign to that agreement and you have witnesses, it is binding. It's musharakat. Because what you're saying is, and the Prophet ﷺ said, there is no contract. There is no contract in Sharia more binding than the marriage contract. Yeah. Of all contracts, this is the one the Prophet ﷺ says there is no contract more binding for the Muslim than the one that makes it halal for him to sleep with a woman. The marriage contract. Once you have agreed to that contract, you're bound by it. But that's because of musharaka. Why? Why did you have to write it down because you didn't trust what's in somebody's head. Where you trust, then no problem. You don't need to write contracts. There's mutual understanding, there's mutual trust. You know where I'm going, I know where you're going, and I don't expect, and you don't expect or suspect or whatever, so no problem. But the moment, because if you're going to say, oh, I can be boss and Sharia is beside me, then why would Sharia allow a marriage contract that clips your powers? Sharia expects you will do things with more than rahmah. Okay? But it's where people have a reason to suspect, either because of your culture, either because of who you are, either because of whatever, they don't trust, or there are certain things they want protected. Sharia allows them to put that. And in the Hanbali school, there is nearly nothing you can't put in the contract. So long as you agree, it's binding. Yeah. They can argue on what can go, what can't go. You can't make a haram, something that's halal. There are all sorts of ways. So they would say, like within the Maliki, if you say you can't marry a second wife, they'll say, but you are making haram something that is permissible. Okay? So they'll say, don't say it that way. Okay, how should I say it? If you're getting married to a second wife, I have a right to get out of the marriage. Or, if you're getting married to a second wife, our marriage is broken. There you can write that one. But then it becomes semantics in a way. But in the Hanbali, did you agree? Yes, it's binding. Adibul Qudama, one of the great Hanbali scholars, writes on this in more detail. The key thing is just to remember, a lot is dependent on the kind of qiyas, the kind of analogy you are drawing. Do you draw an analogy with the sales, or do you draw it with musharaka, partnership?
Is that what we call ta'liq? The contract?
Ta'liq. What is ta'liq?
The wife automatically has the right to divorce the husband or to ask for a divorce.
No, it's the ta'liq. It's something like a contract during the akad.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, some just call it the aqd or kitabatul aqd. I don't know what you call it here. Khulu. Generally, khulu is where the woman initiates a divorce. But in some madhabs, like in the Shafi, Hanafi, and the Hanbali madhab, khulu is a form of talaq. The woman can initiate it, but she still needs the husband's ratification. In Maliki, khulu is a right of the wife. Even if the husband says no, she can get a divorce. Yeah. It's a musharaka. I got in, I said yes, and I can say no. You can say yes, get out.
If I'm not mistaken, it's in history during Prophet time, a lady, a wife, wants to visit her father, her sick father, but the husband did not allow until the father died. So Prophet praised her and said that she get reward. Is it true?
It has been narrated, but the moment you get any hadith, you want to know the context. Where was the father? How far away did he live? I mean, you have to, like, what's the context? You know, she got a reward because she knows her husband better. She got a reward because she was very loyal in obeying the wishes of her husband. But that's just an incident that took place. And you've got many other similar type of incidences. You don't condemn, but you also don't use it as a basis of law. So during the battle, for example, of Khandaq, where the non-Muslim troops are there, then one of the Muslims, he was really frustrated with the standoff and the siege, and he just ran in to attack the enemy. He alone. They killed him. And people said, he's committed suicide. You know, he's ruined himself. And the Prophet said, no, don't say that. Okay. Inshallah, he's in Jannah. Is the Prophet therefore saying that's a good way of doing things? No. So, just because the Prophet praised a particular thing, you need to understand the context. Why? But not to start drawing general rules when that specific context is not clear. And this is unfortunately the case with many hadith. And that is why Shatibi and some of these other scholars insist, know the maqasid, be guided by the maqasid, because then this is based on a lot of evidence. And single hadith, number one, it's single. Number two, the context is not clear. Number three, you could interpret it in a number of ways. Because it's got too much speculation around it, it's not as reliable as the maqasid.
Is there any books that when we read the hadith will also tell us the context so that we understand more about the hadith?
There are books that are like sharh of hadith, like Imam al-Nawawi's own and Fathul Bari, Hajar, where when he picks a hadith, he would usually also quote other versions of the hadith that give more context. Unfortunately, many hadith lose their context on the way. So you end up with a hadith that says actions are judged by their intentions, and that's it. You need to look at other versions to give you the bigger context. And that is why it was important for mujtahid imams to not depend on one hadith, but to look for the different versions of the hadith, because then you get a bigger picture of it. And that is why also the subject of sababul wurud was critical for scholars, just like sababul nuzul for the Quran, where you look at the context. Sababul wurud looked at what was the context when the Prophet said this, because then you understand the why more accurately. We'll stop for a break, inshallah, and come back in X number of minutes.